It's not a joke when people say, I just wanted to say the R word, and that's why I voted for Trump. You might assume that that is a position held by an absolute dumbass, and you're not wrong for thinking that. It is an incredibly dumb and childish position to hold, except those petty grievances absolutely have played a formative role in the decision-making process for a lot of people. I tweeted about this earlier. Rudy Giuliani, update, Starbucks employees must write Charlie Kirk's name. An update from Starbucks. I said, I promise you, if we get a crumb of power, we are not doing this shit. It's going to be more worker control, free healthcare, education, high-speed rail, public housing, and a jobs program. I hate these losers, man. Because, like, think about it. These guys are dominating the country right now. And what are they hyper-focusing on? Sanitizing television, making late night watchable again. It's like, dude, you are a loser, okay? And this kind of behavior is exactly why you're never going to be able to reach like mass popularity, because this is an entire grievance-based movement that has nothing, okay? That has no interest in genuinely improving people's material realities. That is just about constantly crying to the mods because nobody likes you, because you pissed and shit your pants, and you just now have to sit there in that piss and shit, and you want everyone to smell that piss and shit, and you want everyone to say, smells like roses. That's it. That's what it is. That's what this is. You're like a patently unlikable, annoying person, and that is your major gripe, right? Yes, this was a great tweet. I bookmarked it. Key to understanding the American right for me was realizing this stuff isn't a bit. They're not trolling you. They genuinely think this, and they're 90,000 other hyper-specific pop culture fixations represent a civilizational life or death struggle between real America and woke. This is what happens when you straight up warp your consciousness collectively over culture war agenda items, okay? When all is culture war, then there is no need for class war. You have the entire dumb fascist movement built around cultural resentments. It was about how my grandchildren don't call me anymore, okay? And then it was about how you couldn't say like unhinged shit on Facebook or whatever, right? And now it's about Starbucks won't actually venerate Charlie Kirk. Like, who the f goes to Starbucks and demands that Charlie Kirk get written on the cup? And who cares? Who cares? It's just so ridiculous. They have no interest in real material harm at all. You have this childish vendetta, and that's the only thing you care about. These demands are so ridiculous, okay? It's so stupid. That's why this kind of stuff works so well when they talk about, like, the war on Christmas or whatever the f. It's just like completely made up petty grievances that they must get addressed at any given moment. Okay. Remember the 2016-2020 era of right-wingers calling everything culture war bullshit and trashing it all? Funny how the turntables. No, but they were doing that back then too. They were just much better at pointing the finger of blame at the seemingly hysterical campus warriors. Okay, seemingly hysterical social justice warriors. Like, that's how they did it. Okay. I talked about it. I ironically even debated Charlie Kirk about this at Politicon. All the way back in like 2017, 2016. One of the things that I kept mentioning was the fact that Republicans, very organized, okay, would go to Congress and bully like Facebook and all these other social media platforms to say, you're not giving us enough popularity in the algorithm. You are suppressing us in the algo. But if you actually looked at the data that was readily available at the time, these companies were already working with like Heritage Foundation consultants that were sitting on the boards, okay? Facebook literally all the way back in 2016 had a Heritage Foundation consultant sitting on the board, all right? And guess what? They were already not being suppressed. It was the exact opposite. They were quite literally getting platformed. Ben Shapiro was the most popular guy. Ben Shapiro was more popular than CNN on Facebook all the way back in 2016, but that didn't stop them from hyping up this narrative, developing this hysteria-focused, petty grievance-centered narrative that Republicans were actually not popular enough on these social media platforms. And the only reason why they were able to get away with this was because Republican policies are unpopular. So when Republican policies are unpopular and you run around and you go, hey, this is what I want. Hey, I think the civil rights the civil rights struggle was bad. I think that, we should go back to segregation or something, okay? Most people look at that and go, ew, no, you're a loser. That's the real issue. That is the real issue for Republicans. It's not that they get to say what they believe. It's that they don't want any pushback against it. And worse than that, they want celebration for those beliefs. But there is a hidden recognition that those beliefs are obviously unsustainable with the concept of democracy in many circumstances and the concepts of liberalism in many circumstances, like the notion that, everyone is equal, right? Everyone must be protected. These are things that we have already signed on to as a part of the social contract. And Republicans oftentimes know that that is untenable and unsustainable within the framework of liberalism. Therefore, they get really ass mad when you actually call them out. When you say, that doesn't make sense, I don't like that, they get really mad. They can't stand it. That is the same exact reason why, for example, with Charlie Kirk, Republicans were mad at people who were posting Charlie Kirk quotes. They were mad at people posting the things that Charlie Kirk was saying. Why would you be mad? You loved it when he was saying it. Why are you mad now? They're mad because they understand that if there's any sort of sunlight on these kinds of attitudes, most people are going to go, wait a minute, this is the guy that you guys are venerating? I don't know about that. This is the guy that we're supposed to be like mourning, doing a national day of grief over? Yeah, I mean, it's totally up that he got shot. It's completely unacceptable, but like, I'm not going to mourn that guy, is what they're going to say if they know what his actual point of view is, which is why they've been punishing people for literally presenting his point of view. Okay, direct quotes.
One more thing.
If you put Charlie Kirk's own statements out there, you get clapped. The Onion had a good piece on this, actually. The Onion had a joke about this that I really liked. It's just, hopefully before they get destroyed by this administration, because, comedy is legal now. Charlie Kirk, not in his own words, we honor the right-wing activists by making up quotes that sound much better given the moment. That's where we're at. It's like, hey, if you want to truly honor this person who is a political operative, you have to lie about what his positions were, okay? Lie in the direction that is more appropriate for the masses to consume. And they don't even want to say what any of his positions are, because they know that, like, even a moderate assessment of his positions require you to still reveal what his worldview looks like. And his worldview is right-wing, reactionary, extreme, radical. So you have to straight up defend it. You can't even just like say what his position is. You have to defend his positions as well. That's what they demand from you, because that's what this is always about. Republicans recognize that their policies are deeply unpopular, especially when implemented. Okay? For that reason, you can't actually say what these positions are. You have and you can't even express discontent with these positions. You have to love these positions. That's what it's about. Okay? It's antithetical to free speech. Obviously, it's the opposite, where it's like, no discourse from you, please. No discontent from you, please. How dare you push back against me? You're supposed to say you love my opinion. That's just it. It is the lamest version of fascism to date. It's not only monstrous, it's not only violent as fascism is, but it's also incredibly weak, incredibly lame.
Thing that's on my mind tonight, and conservatives everywhere. The idea that people are saying, well, he was an extremist, or he was a racist, or he was a Nazi, or a misogynist, whatever. Charlie Kirk was a mainstream conservative Republican.
Mainstream conservative Republicanism, if you are, obvious, if you're honest about it, is that, okay? It's those things. Why the fuck are you mad? You're mad because you recognize those things are we're supposed to learn that those things are bad. Okay? It hasn't reached a level. It has not reached a level in our collective consciousness that like misogyny is seen as like a good thing. Vice still to this day is not seen as a virtue. These are things that people actually reflect on negatively, which is precisely the reason why they still push back. It's like when a Nazi says they're not a Nazi. okay, when they're in public, because if they're branded with that moniker, it makes it a lot harder for them to reach a broader audience. Of course, that can change if the collective consciousness moved in that direction to such a degree that like fascism was seen as a positive thing. Okay, they would just openly say they're fascists. It's that simple.
Had views that are held by tens of millions of people, including more than half the country in the last election.
And the reason why I'm mentioning this, okay, the reason why I'm mentioning this is so that you understand that there are still a ton of Americans with good conscience, okay? There are still so many people that have discontent. There are so many people that actually might experience some of these opinions that you might consider to be bigoted, but they can be convinced, and you should never give up on them. I never do, and you shouldn't either. That's why I've for years maintained this position that you always have to be kind to people and be aggressive against the institutions, just like Michael Jamal Brooks, rest in power, used to say, okay? Be kind to individuals, be ruthless to systems. And that's what we have to do.
If I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified. It begs the question, when you see a black pilot, you wonder, you say, I hope they are qualified. And in the spirit of affirmative action, we have Ramon and Cadillac are your two pilots. They've never flown before, but they are black. If I'm dealing with somebody in customer service who's a moronic black woman, is she there because of her excellence, or is she there because of affirmative action? I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously.
The war on white people continues.
You had to go steal a white person's slot to go be taken somewhat seriously.
We are raising a generation of weak people like Simone Biles.
LeBron James is a self-interested, narcissistic, and we know he's not very smart.
You're representing your nation. You're selfish sociopath.
Not very bright, not wise, not somebody of good character.
She is a shame to the country.
Blacks in America did not have the same rights they had today. Data shows they were actually better in the 1940s.
Let's get loud for Kyle Rittenhouse.
I'm also going to offer some context and some nuance about the death of George Floyd that no one dares to say out loud, which is that this guy was a scumbag.
Remember what BLM stands for? Burn, loot, and murder.
Now, does that mean it deserves to die? That's two totally different things. Of course not.
Prowling blacks go around for fun.
You know what's crazy about that is like that right there. If you speak about Charlie Kirk in that way, oh my Lord, you are getting fired. People are posting your address online. Okay. They're coming after you. Maybe you go to jail. You know, the administration is doing that. There was no point where the liberals, like, can you imagine there was a point where like Joe Brandon was coming out and being like, you talk shit about George Floyd, I'm coming after you, Jack. You know what I mean? Like the administration was just like, that's right. We are going to make it illegal to say mean things about George Floyd. No, but that is the hysteria that these guys actually believed. On the one hand, they did this shit. On the other hand, like while they were saying this stuff, on the other hand, they would turn around and be like, and they're coming after us for saying this. The administration is woke. They want to kill us for saying the truth. Okay? And it's so crazy. You're a terrorist piece of shit. Brother, this administration is literally terrorizing you. Okay? They are terrorizing you. I know you don't give a about Jimmy Kimmel, and neither do I, but I promise you, you are not getting a better deal here. Okay? Bullshit. Okay. Explain to me. Is your life more affordable? Are you capable of purchasing a home? Do you feel like things are getting better now that trans people are no longer able to compete in athletic endeavors at the collegiate level? Did that actually materially improve your life in any meaningful capacity? You could, in the past, you could at least make this argument that like, well, I'm a Trump merchandise salesman. This is what I do. So obviously the Trump administration has been fantastic for me. Now you can't even say that because he put tariffs on the Trump merchandise because all of it was coming from Bangladesh. It's awesome. It's be like, you're a terrorist. You're a terrorist. It's like, meanwhile, everything around you is on fire. What does that have to do with anything at all? What do you mean? That's what politics is, dumb. You are no different than the liberals who don't understand this because you also analyze this from the lens of team sport. My team is winning, so I guess my shit's better overall. That's what liberals do too. And I get very frustrated with them over this, where it's like, you have to wake up. That's the entire point of politics. You are supposed to make demands from your party, from your elected representatives, and they have to actually follow through on those demands. And if the only thing that they're promising to you is no improvements to your material reality whatsoever, but simply punishing your enemies that they have designed as the singular evil in society, whether it be undocumented migrants that are just simply trying to make an honest living, okay, toiling every goddamn day in 100-degree heat out in the fields, and they get punished for it instead of getting the proper documentation, which is that simple, for the record. It's that easy for them to just like literally become documented workers in this country. All right. If you think that those guys are your actual enemies, and it's not the fact that like your boss will never give you an honest day of work's wages that you deserve, and that your landlord is going to consistently keep increasing your rent prices, and you're never going to be able to actually own a home, and you're never going to be able to retire. Like, those are the real problems in your life. It's not the random Guatemalans. Wake up. Wake up. Do you understand? That is the entire point. Donald Trump didn't win because he said he's going to dominate random Mexican migrants. He won because he said he was going to fix the cost of living, and he tied it back to Mexican migrants. And now he's punishing the Mexican migrants and the Guatemalan migrant workers. And guess what? Cost of living hasn't improved at all. Wake up. Stop focusing on irrelevant bullshit. Stop focusing on your neighbors. Stop focusing on people that have the exact same class position as you. Okay? This is how they get away with robbing you blind. Also, I don't even know why you are saying I'm a terrorist. I guess maybe because I say I'm an anti-fascist. Is that what it is? Voting is about voters extracting concessions from politicians in exchange for your vote.
Voters were being open that they would not vote for Biden if he continued the genocide. Yet many diehard liberal blue waivers and resistance libs suggest that those voters threatening to withhold their vote should be voting for Biden unconditionally due to the threat of a second Trump presidency. Many were saying some form of, you need to unconditionally vote for the Democrats because you're voting to save democracy. And, well, I'm not sure if they know this, but the basis of democracy is literally about extracting concessions from politicians in exchange.
You know this is a HasanAbi head, full slack. You know this is HasanAbi head because he's verbatim repeating what I say all the time.
For your vote. That's the name of the game. It's a cornerstone. When they tell you you need to unconditionally vote for the Democrats because we're voting to save democracy, well, what?
Always remember two fundamental truths. Politics is about the distribution of resources and power, including violence. Who gets to do it? Who is the recipient of it? Structural violence, direct violence, state violence, and the like. And democracy is about extracting concessions from your elected representatives. Okay? Democracy under liberal capitalism is seen as a pressure valve to make people feel as though they have an option to at least change, to at least make people feel as though they have a say in this process. But it's very obvious that a bourgeois democracy never yields those outcomes. And that's why there's so much discontent. And in the absence of any sort of real structural pushback in the form of labor unions, in the form of organizing and activism, in the form of like direct action, this duopoly that we exist under keeps doing the same shit. Profit over people every single time. Okay? Every single time. Meanwhile, you still got in this chat going, oh, you're a terrorist. You are blinded by your hatred. You're blinded because someone deluded you into thinking that I'm your enemy because I want you to get free healthcare. I want you and your children, if you ever have them in the future, to have a better future. Okay? I want you to get a free education. I want you to get free healthcare. I want you to have decent wages. I want you to have more power in the workplace. How the is that bad for you? That's it. Think about that. These run around thinking that like I'm the enemy, thinking that we are the enemy. They try to invent new realities, invent alternative realities where they go, nah, you're violent, you're bad, you're violent, you're bad. You want something worse for me.
To go target white people, that's a fact.
There's no such thing as white privilege or racism. So
Black people are allowed to talk about black culture in a way that white culture cannot. Black people can go up and say that there's a baby mama problem in black America, and white people are not allowed to say that. Oh, I just did. So what are you gonna do, cancel me? Black people are allowed to say, I'm
a grown man, I got way
black
too much
people are allowed. Skin color now gets their own summertime celebration. Oh wow, look how far blacks have come. It has now become a racial complaining day. Thomas Sowell and Justice Clarence Thomas are far better black role models to celebrate than Martin Luther King. This guy is not worthy of a national holiday.
There's a mythology around MLK that does not warrant the reverence that he gets treated with in America.
We have a federal holiday to a guy that talked about race all the time. Kirk describes King as, quote, a bad guy. It's true. We celebrate the Civil Rights Act more than the American founding. The country made a mistake when it passed the Civil Rights Act. Also true. The Democrats are not lifting a finger to remember the well over 1.
Yeah, when you bring this stuff up, by the way, especially about MLK, and the reason why, so I'll tell you something, okay? There have always been conservatives who obviously were alive during the MLK period that despised MLK, and a lot of conservatives that never gave up on that. But because of the way that MLK's legacy was whitewashed by liberals for the most part and became like a much more palatable figure by American consciousness, in the last 20 years or so, shitting on Martin Luther King became a big no-no. Okay? Post-Reagan, I would say, shitting on MLK, especially in the last 20 years, became a major no-no, okay? Republicans would be branded as racist if they were to do so. Charlie Kirk was bringing that back, that old school conservatism back. By the way, old school conservatism kind of feels a lot like you're just being a racist, right? But the reason why people still get very upset when you bring this up about Charlie Kirk's position on Martin Luther King, the reason why they get mad is because, again, a lot of people would look at you funny if you were to say these things out loud. What Charlie Kirk was saying it out loud, and he was defending them vociferously. He believed it, okay? This was his position. But obviously it reflects poorly on him and his movement, and therefore now conservatives don't want you to bring it. They don't want you to bring it up.
100 people that have died in Texas Hill Country. The death toll likely would not have been as high if it wasn't for DEI.
Ketanji Brown Jackson is what your country looks like on critical race theory.
You're gonna remove my appendix and you're a black lesbian?
Ketanji Brown Jackson is an embodiment of the tyranny.
Like, when people say this is out of context, you have to remember something, okay? As someone who is the recipient of out-of-context smears, you have to listen to directionally where this ideology is going, okay? Because there are instances where, for example, I'm taken out of context and I mean the exact opposite thing, right? It happens all the time. Or there are instances that people regularly use, quotes that people regularly use, like when I said, sexual violence taking place on October 7 does not change the dynamic for me even one bit. I'm obviously referencing genocide. I'm saying nothing justifies genocide, including sexual violence that took place on October 7th, okay? But people will say, oh, dude, you're saying that, like, these guys are doing for resistance or whatever the like they try to shelter the public from the actual assessment because they recognize that if they were to say the entire quote out loud, most people will go, yeah, that's right. It is that doesn't actually justify genocide, right? But in this circumstance, when people say, oh, you're taking him out of context as far as like the MLK quote, for example, right? It's not like Charlie Kirk is actually saying like MLK was bad at being a bad guy. You know what I mean? The rest of the context isn't like changing his perspective. The rest of the context is just more defense of that position. Do you understand? Like he's not sitting there and being like MLK's bad and then people clip that, but then when you see the extended quote, it actually turns into MLK's bad at being a bad person. He's actually a really good person. Like that would be something that is taken out of context, right?
That we currently live on. She's an ideological, unintelligent, yet confident fanatic.
Why does Kirk believe passing the Civil Rights Act was a mistake? Now, again, apparently they don't listen to the show because we do that at least once a week, right?
So she wants to be the first ever black woman on the Supreme Court, yet she won't even admit that she's a woman.
The transgender movement is an introductory phase
These doctors need to be put in prison.
to get you to strip yourself of your humanity,
A Nuremberg-style trial.
to mesh with machines. Interestingly, I think there is an argument to bring back the MRS degree.
Reject feminism.
Young women need to get married at a younger age and start having kids.
Like, don't, like, I'm studying sociology. No, you're not. We know why you're here.
Submit to your husband, Taylor. You're not in charge.
You will find a husband if you have the intent to find a husband.
You got to change your name. If not, you don't really mean it.
Democrat women want to die alone without children.
A lot of them are on birth control too, and birth control like really screws up female brains, by the way.
It's really rich. I didn't know women not to complain 50 years ago. That's funny. We should tell them to stop freezing their eggs and start finding their partner earlier and have lots of babies.
Every single one of you need to make sure that your loved ones are not on birth control.
So materially insane to think that 1 in 5 American women will be in their life.
It is, I agree.
No, meaning that they're lying about being.
You're comparing abortion to the Holocaust.
Absolutely, I am. In fact, it's worse. It's worse. Because Jewish donors have been the #1 funding mechanism.
Yes, he has said abortions are worse than the Holocaust over and over again. He has said that. Of course, that's like another extremely radical position from the moderate conservative. The reason why they have to keep up this notion that this is a moderate conservative position without revealing what it actually is because most people understand, like the Joe Rogans of the world. If you go to Joe Rogan and you say abortion is evil and wrong and barbaric and it's worse than the Holocaust, Joe Rogan's going to be like, what the are you saying? And I know for a fact that he would say that because it has happened. If you recall, the Babylon Bee guy, one of those Babylon Bee guys went on the Joe Rogan Experience, and Joe Rogan and the Babylon Bee guy had a conversation about how abortion is murder. Joe said, I don't think it's murder. There are certain instances where it's valid. And the Babylon Bee guy straight up defended the notion, defended on principle that abortion is murder, that if a 5-year-old was like, if a 12-year-old was, that he would force that 12-year-old to carry a pregnancy to term. Joe said, my daughter is like 12. You know what I mean? And he, obviously, in that moment, it became very real for him. Because the reason why I'm bringing up Joe Rogan is because, like, he is closer to, like, his positions, not his, like, material realities, obviously, but his positions, his brain processing capability is quite literally closer to, like, a normie than myself or anyone in this community, right? Regardless of your working class background. And you know this already because you talk to your coworkers. If you talk to your coworkers, then you've already heard them repeat and regurgitate Joe Rogan style takes. This is a major aspect of conservatism. On the one hand, you want to be able to advance these positions. You want to be able to get other people on board with these positions. But on the other hand, you kind of recognize that even coworkers who are normally much more open-minded to these like ridiculous positions, there is a level of reactionary sentiment that they won't go beyond, where they'll say, that's too much for me.
Mechanism of radical, open border, neoliberal, quasi-Marxist policies. By the way, this is my other problem with death penalty. It takes too long, too many appeals. Expensive. It should be public. It should be quick. It should be televised. Well, at what age should you start to see public execution?
16. I think you could do it earlier. I think you maybe at age 12.
I want to watch that execution. That'll make...
Ooh, jockey. Sure, your brain processing capability is so much better. I never said that. I'm a dumb guy, man. Okay? I say it all the time. The difference is I know I'm dumb. And I think that's like a superpower as opposed to the dumb guys who don't know they're dumb. Do you see what I mean? I know my limitations, right? I think a lot of people don't. And that is a major issue with a lot of people. They don't know what their limitations are. They think they have none. And they just keep chirping. And we exist in a society where people who chirp without any knowledge whatsoever are rewarded for it by other dumb guys. And that is a big issue. Okay? Dunning-Kruger. Entitlement. The notion that you are a unique snowflake, and by virtue of you coming up with any position, no matter how stupid it is, other people must respect it. Other people must listen to it, and other people must believe it and defend it. You know what I mean? What are your limitations according to you as self-reflection exercise? My strong suit, I would say, is foreign policy. I'm not the most skilled orator, even though a lot of chatters will disagree with me. I don't have the level of confidence that many others do when they're doing public speaking. Okay. My limitations are when it comes to finance related stuff. Feminist theory is another one, certainly, but I don't think that is as big as a limitation as you think it is. Like, even when it comes to like queer theory, feminist theory, there's a lot of stuff that I think allows me to be a better, more appeal, there's a lot of stuff that allows me to have more broad appeal. Because like, if I was, like, I will say that is a weakness for sure, but I don't think that's, that's one that is like making me a worse commentator. I think that makes me a better commentator. And the reason why I think so is because a lot of people are not even at my position when it comes to a lot of these issues, and I try to pull them into that. I try to pull them towards a journey where they're more empathetic to people that people whose backgrounds are different than theirs. You do know a lot about queer culture. I mean, yeah, but that doesn't mean that I fully understand, I don't know, queer theory or whatever.
My day better. A lot. I mean, Joe Biden is a bumbling, dementia-filled Alzheimer's corrupt tyrant who should honestly be put in prison and or given the death penalty for his crimes against America.
The Democrat Party believes everything that God hates.
Like, we're dealing with maggots, vermin, and swine here. These are not good people. They're not even a little bit good. In fact, I know people that went to Haiti passively as like agnostic atheists, and they came back searching for Jesus because they saw like legit demonic activity. Kamala Harris wants to see the elimination of the United States of America.
Democrat Party supports everything that God hates.
There's not much you can do, folks. You have a government that hates you. You have a traitor as the president. Buy weapons. I keep on saying that.
As top Republicans reject any link between GOP rhetoric and Paul Pelosi assault. If some amazing patriot out there in San Francisco wants to really be a midterm hero, someone should go and bail this guy out. Native-born Americans, you better buy weapons, everybody. Have a lot of guns at your disposal. I would never leave your home without a weapon.
I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year, so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights.
We actually need looser gun laws because I think that
gun laws.
Oh yeah. They said we have more guns at the Turning Point HQ than you can imagine. Yeah, if anyone ever tries to come, that will not end well for you.
Oh no, imagine the world without Joy Reid.
Imagine the world without Sheila Jackson Lee or Michelle Obama or Ketanji Brown Jackson.
I am channeling the emotions of millions of conservatives who are angry. They knew Charlie. They loved Charlie. They viewed Charlie as a mainstream conservative.
The saddest part about it is that this is true. Okay? He is by virtue of his job position. Charlie Kirk is a mainstream conservative. That was his role. Okay? And as mainstream conservatism became more Trumpian, which is the dog whistles coming off, right? And turning into direct statements about exactly what they mean, okay? He did become a mainstream, I mean, he was always a mainstream figure. And he kept being a mainstream figure. That's it. I miss the old conservative party. No, the old conservative party always was this as well. They were just more restrained in their commentary. I need you to understand, make no mistake. This is what Republicans have always represented. This is what the right flank has always represented in this country. Why? Because they have to hold on to some kind of political polarization. They have to hold on to some kind of political polarization because they are aligned on broad economic issues, and they have become more aligned since the Reagan era. Okay? Once Reagan came in and neoliberalism was fully implemented, Republicans and Democrats aligned on and found broad consensus on a lot of the economic policies. Okay? And therefore, they had to find things that they were arguing over so that people could choose one party over the other every time the elections came around.